Hey YouTube, Joyboy here. So, chapter 879 of One Piece has dropped, so if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so, because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Whoo baby man, the hype level, this chapter is good. So we started off at the very beginning of this chapter, with the Straw Hat crew thinking about Pedro. Everything was pretty chaotic from the moment that Pedro set off that huge explosion. So last chapter, they didn't really have much time to think, only to react. And so this chapter, they finally had a moment to reflect, and you can definitely tell that they aren't used to their friends dying around them. Now, I brought this up in a previous video, and people talked about their flashbacks, how people died, but a lot of the flashbacks took place many years ago. And so since the point in time that they joined the Straw Hat crew, it's been relatively smooth sailing. Of course, there was bumps along the road, but after all the dust cleared, everything was alright. And this is really the first time that a lot of them haven't dealt with being in a situation where their strength wasn't enough, and it was because of this that they lost a friend. And guys, I really think that Oda cultivated a perfect scenario to show off Jinbei and why he is so valuable to the crew. Jinbei is a warrior, and he has an absurd amount of experience, and he showed it off in this chapter. Yes, Pedro died, but sometimes in order to reach your goals, that the situations will become so tough that it requires people to make decisions like this. Jinbei wasn't saying that they should forget about Pedro, that they shouldn't mourn him. Jinbei was highlighting the importance of making sure that his last moments had value. Pedro sacrificed himself for you. He wanted you to carry on, and now it is your job to take the moment, the advantage Pedro gave you. It may seem counterintuitive that your friend just died and for you to act as though it didn't happen, but to do anything other than that would be an insult to his memory. Jinbei is oh so necessary to the crew. And so after this speech, it led into the Straw Hats preparing another coup de burst, as well as gaining intel on what their pursuers were doing. And so what Carrot sees is disturbing. Big Mom walking on water, but not really, because Perospero is actually on her shoulder, using his Devil Fruit abilities to create a path for her. And the reason Perospero is being forced to do this is I think that we can suppose that after the explosion, both Prometheus and Zeus were flung through the air, I guess, to a completely different coast of the island. We can see the header, and it says where they were, the western coast, as opposed to the southwestern coast. And it also seems like they have no idea just how far away they were from where everyone else originally was, nor where everyone went. So they're essentially completely removed from the story in the short term. And so to me, guys, this is very important. Now, the first point is that Big Mom, obviously, her power might be nerfed at least somewhat, because she does seem to rely pretty heavily, not that she isn't strong without them, but she does rely heavily on her homies in combat. So right now, all she has is Napoleon. But I think most importantly is that without Zeus, Perospero basically says it in this chapter, Big Mom has no way of traveling over the sea, except for very odd and inconvenient ways, such as what we are experiencing in this last chapter, with Perospero creating a path for her using candy. And so this is super fortunate for the Straw Hats, because it appears as though they're essentially walking towards them, while they're preparing another coup de burst where they can travel, a kilometer at a time. So this definitely buys them some time. In fact, I honestly couldn't believe that Big Mom right now could outrun the ship even if they didn't use a coup de burst. Unless she finds another way, Zeus reappears, or she's able to jump several kilometers at a time to essentially jump from where she is currently onto the Straw Hat ship. But I really do expect Big Mom to catch up to them in some way or another. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure when, but it's definitely going to happen. And the reason that I feel so strongly about this is, oh my god, Perospero is screwed. This dude, after being threatened by Big Mom, and specifically fearing for his own life in the case that these Straw Hats, or Big Mom finds out that the Straw Hats don't have the cake, is actually traveling on her shoulder right now. He's an idiot. And it couldn't be any more clearer in the direction that Oda is taking this by the way that he is portraying Perospero, threatening, I'm going to torture all of these people. Perospero right now is the villain, is the enemy, and you know that it's going to come back and bite him. If the guy was smart, he would understand that if they accomplish their task of torturing the Strats, then at that point in time, Big Mom would realize that they don't have the cake, and her threat to him would then become really relevant. So why are you there? You should be hiding. You should be in the mirror world. You should not be on her shoulder. And so this leads into another thing that I want to bring up is people, I think a lot recently, maybe less so after the last few chapters, are looking for reasons to be upset, and I think that they might find another reason after this chapter with essentially Oda writing off or writing out of the story Prometheus and Zeus, seeing that as a huge excuse. And just like pretty much all previous examples, given that Whole Cake Island isn't complete, it really depends on how much you trust Oda. But a few chapters ago, Oda sort of was setting up a potential relationship between Zeus and Nami. There was all of this interaction, which I am certain will come back up. From an unbiased standpoint, guys, if the only reason why Nami fed Zeus those black balls that he enjoyed so much was so that they could escape Big Mom for those 2 chapters, it would be extremely underwhelming, and I think that I might have a problem with it. I really feel like the best way to take this is for this interaction to be set up for something that Zeus does in the future, given what has happened in the past. This is usually how Oda writes these things. So I believe pretty strongly that Zeus will find his way back into the story, and for his relation with Nami to matter. And so again, this depends on whether or not Zeus finds Big Mom or not, but it seems unlikely that he will to me after this chapter. So it would be very curious how exactly Zeus would get from the western coast to potentially back to Big Mom and in some way be able to interact in the story again. But as always, for us to be certain of anything requires more information that we most likely will not find until either shortly before something happens or, until it happens. But anyway, after this, we cut to Pudding, Chiffon, Sanji, and Pound. My boy Dritz is going to be so happy that Pound showed up again. However, he was completely ignored, but at least we know where he is. I think I and other people speculated a lot of really complicated stuff, but as per usual, it was very straightforward from the information that we were given. Pound showed a lot of, he was uncomfortable with what was taking place in the Seducing Woods, pretty much recommended for everyone to run because the Enraged Army was going to come and they were all screwed. Luffy, being Luffy, decided to go headfirst into conflict, and Pound was like, see ya, roped up a ship and was out the door. And so I could speculate a bunch of stuff about Pound, but honestly I don't really feel like doing that. All I really want to draw your attention to is that Oda doesn't forget about hanging plots. Pound was a hanging plot, and even 30 or so chapters after the last time that we saw him, here he is again. Oda hasn't forgotten. But going back to Chiffon, Pudding, and Sanji, we got a little bit more interaction and of the relationship between Pudding and Sanji, which honestly, guys, I love. I fully enjoy now every single scene with Pudding and Sanji. It's new, it's different, for One Piece at the very least. And it's cute and funny, I think. But I think the most important takeaway that we can get from these conversations is the relationship between Lola and Pudding. Oda here is setting up more to their story. This is essentially confirmation from the subtle clues that were dropped throughout the chapters before when we thought Pudding was evil, that she in fact was really great friends with Lola. Lola was her dearest sister, and in this chapter it was stated that Pudding really hoped that someday she would return. I definitely feel as though there is much more to this story that we are currently not yet aware of. And this most certainly helps further justify the original theories and thoughts that we had about Pudding, that she might want to leave Whole Cake Island. What Big Mom has done to Lola for sure would not be okay to Pudding, given what we can perceive as their relationship. But anyway, it seems as though they have arrived in Chocolate Town and the cake baking is imminent. And so this will lead me into Luffy versus Katakuri. And so guys, I don't think it could be any more clear, at least in my opinion, what it is that Oda is setting up. Katakuri is stating that there is in no world is it possible for rubber to best Mochi, that no matter what Luffy attempts to do using his fruit, Katakuri can copy it. And most importantly, he can copy it better. But guys, that despite Katakuri's ability to perhaps copy certain things that Luffy can do with his fruit and potentially do them better, there's one thing that he cannot copy, and that is he cannot become rubber, and that rubber is known for one quality in particular: elasticity. Rubber is rubbery. Far more bounty than Mochi. This is all setting up Gear 4th, guys. Luffy is gonna go Gear 4th, and Katakuri, my man, you cannot copy this. Doflamingo straight up told us that Katakuri will not be able to emulate this, because what creates its awesome power is the interaction between Haki and his rubber body. The idea is very simple, that when you have objects that are compressible, that if you do compress them like a spring, they want to go back into their original state. This is called, I guess, elasticity, and it creates a force. And so while using Haki on Luffy's body, he makes his rubber harder. And because it is harder to move. But at the same time, the force in which it contracts or expands is much greater. Katakuri, my man, this is the power of rubber, something your Mochi fruit cannot even hope to achieve. I really feel as though what Oda is setting up here is Luffy going Gear 4th and surprising Katakuri with just how powerful he can become, using his quote inferior devil fruit. Straight up, we haven't seen a great fight with Gear 4th yet, just Luffy beating up on opponents and off-screen fights, so I think this is the time for it to happen. But anyway guys, as I said earlier, I really enjoyed this chapter. I really expect that the next time that we have a break, it's going to come at the absolute worst time, at probably a huge cliffhanger, but I guess that we will see. At the very least, there is no break next week. But yeah guys, given what we just finished with in this chapter, I would fully expect that the next chapter is going to be a whole lot of Luffy versus Katakuri. So yeah boys, it's getting real. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you noticed anything from this chapter that I may have missed. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.